Well, David, welcome to the feed. How are you doing this morning?
I'm really good. Thanks for coming in and doing this. This is awesome, Michael.
Well, this is such an impressive facility. You and I have chatted once before, but being here, seeing this is a whole other dimension of wow for me. So I'm really excited to dig in. We were just watching a great video, gave me a few more ideas about questions, particularly at the time we're in. So amazing facility. Let's jump right in. Tell me about yourself. What's your background, professional and personal journey?
Oh my God. I think I've got a fairly unique background. I've been one of these guys that have sort of changed professions, but I think it's always the same thing. It's about leadership. It's about building the best team that you can wherever you're working. Many years ago, I started in Dublin in Ireland as an young apprentice chef in the 80s. I was fortunate enough. I traveled the world, lived in Switzerland, lived in Australia, worked in London back in the Marco Pierre White days. And
Is that where you grew up in Dublin? Or you're in?
I grew up just outside Belfast. Actually, my claim to fame is, and this is kind of perfect timing, Rory McIlroy and I we both grew up in Hollywood.
Yeah.
In Northern Ireland, just outside Belfast, and actually went to the same school, obviously at different times because I'm a lot older, but I guess he was smarter because he chose golf and I played rugby,
Yeah.
and hence the kind of broken nose. But I grew up in Ireland. I had a great childhood. I did an apprenticeship in Dublin, and I went traveling around the world. I was living in Australia, and I actually opened a magazine, and I saw Whistler, big feature on Whistler, and I'm like, damn, that looks nice. So hey, here I am. I ended up in Canada in 1996, so actually 30 years ago.
Wow. And how would you describe yourself? You have great curiosity. You're more engineering based. You're science. You're art.
I think what I love to do is I love to look at things from a different angle. I want to go in somewhere and hopefully improve things, make things better. But I guess I want to be the best I can at whatever we're doing and whatever that looks like.
Right.
And I also want to. I love building teams. I remember I was interviewed once by a gentleman for a position through an executive search company, and I had to do one of those sort of psychological profiles.
Right.
And I always tell the same story where I was doing this psychological profile, and the gentleman that was put me through all these questions and putting me through my paces and stuff, and he said, so you put down here that one of your strengths is building strong teams. How do you do that? And I remember I looked at him and went completely blank, and I was like, I have absolutely no idea, and I'm sure that's the worst answer I could give you, and I'm not going to get this job. And he said, no. He said, that's a great answer, because if that's what you do, and obviously that is what you do by your track record, and he said, but you don't have to think about it, it's a gift. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I've never thought about that before.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I like to build good teams. I like to change things. I like to look for a different angle on something. How can we do things better? How can we improve what is done in a certain way? Food Bank is a great example of that. I actually volunteered about a year before. I had no idea I was going to work at the Food Bank when I volunteered. Working with a different company, and the CEO of that company and myself, we volunteered for a day. I did the traditional food sort.
Yeah.
And honestly walked away at the end of the day going horrified at what we were actually sorting through and what we were actually giving people in need.
There has to be a better way, kind of.
And it was so bizarre. It was like the universe. 6 months later, I got a phone call from an executive search company saying, hey, we need to talk with your background and sort of food. And I went from being a chef to running a private club in Vancouver. I was the CEO of the Terminal City Club. And we need to have a chat about there's an opportunity. So I was like, tell me more.
Interesting. All right, well, let's talk about the Greater Vancouver Food Bank. Tell me about its scope, scale, your operating model. I mean, the one thing that jumps out right away to me as a citizen is, years ago at some point there's a sign outside, we don't accept contributions from average citizens. And at first you're like, well, why do you not do that? And then you start thinking about it, and it just illustrates to me the kind of thoughtfulness behind what you do here. This is no ordinary food bank. We've got some delicious beverages here that are branded. I've got people behind us prepping strawberries. Just take us through the organization and how you work and what you do, kind of the mechanics.
Sure. Well, I'm thrilled you're here. Honestly, it's one of my biggest joys is when somebody actually comes to the food bank and they tour with me, and I probably give about 2 or 3 tours a week. And people literally come and they always have the same reaction. They're like, this is not what I was expecting. So, oh my gosh, where do I start? 8 years ago I started. Very little food in the warehouse, giving out 20%, maybe 20% fresh. It wasn't even great quality, the 20% that was fresh. But the whole food sort thing that I did, it actually cost the Greater Vancouver Food Bank about, oh my gosh, $30,000 to $50,000 a year to actually dispose of the food that
Wow.
we couldn't use. Because when you have to sort through food that, and the public are, it was set up in this way. I mean, I did it as well with my daughters when they would come home, and it's 8 o'clock at night and,
Oh, by the way, I have to bring
there's
food for tomorrow.
there's a food drive at school tomorrow. Like,
Yeah.
and what do? You do what everybody else does. You go through your kitchen cupboard, you go to the back of the cupboard, or, God forbid, grandma passes away and you clean out the pantry and you got stuff in there from 1962.
Yeah.
And it'll go to the food bank. And people don't think it through, I guess, to the end, and they're doing what's traditionally always been done. So
Yeah.
I made, I guess, a pretty bold decision. I got a lot of phone calls from across Canada from other organizations going, "You're never going to survive.
Yeah. How are you going to run the
What are
food
you
bank
gonna
without
do?
contributions? Yeah.
Vancouver, you've lost your mind," and all this kind of stuff. And so we, it took a while to try and to say to the public, like, we're not going to accept public food drives anymore. But you have to give them an alternative. And what we did was we actually created a virtual food drive on our website. So you can go on the Greater Vancouver Food Bank website, and you can actually donate money. You can kind of pick food and choose food that we have up there and photographs and pictures. And so you can buy eggs or you can buy milk and things like that. We get the cash, which obviously, as you know, goes a lot further than sort of food donations.
Sure.
Where we can actually buy what we want. And that actually now brings in about $850,000
Wow.
a year.
What was the response to the institutions, like the schools, for example, that the clubs that would have these food drives? How did they accommodate with that?
I think the organizations got on board quicker than the public. The public were
okay.
still kind of like, well, what do you mean I can't drop off a box of craft dinner? Well, that's not what I want to give people. And I always say that, I had the same kind of story, and I got my team to say the same story. Like, people that are having a tough time, people that are short of money, they can go to the dollar store. They can buy those high sodium noodles. They can buy craft dinner at 30 cents a box. What they can't buy is what we should be giving out. And that's what kind of my mantra for the food bank is: we should be giving out eggs and milk and cheese and yogurt and fresh fruit, fresh vegetables and protein. And so why would we give out the same thing that they can actually buy
Right.
when you're going through a tough time? And
Yeah.
hopefully, there's a whole other side of this. I could talk all day about, the nutrition and health for kids and proper development, and
Sure.
kids that get proper nutrition do better in school and all the rest of it. But no, but I think the public, it was a big adjustment for the public. For the organizations and sort of if they were going to do a food drive, we would let them, but we would be very specific. So we want to have, if one school wants to challenge another school for a food drive, and you're hell bent on getting food, get me canned salmon, or get me something else along those lines that I actually want. So we're not having people cleaning out their kitchen cupboards.
Right. Now, you serve the entire community. You serve a network of other food banks, right? So it's kind of a distributed model. Do I have that close to right?
Yeah, we distribute food in two ways. We distribute directly to the public. So we have about 16,000 clients a week right now that come and pick up food. We just bought a warehouse on Lougheed Highway in Vancouver. An average day there is probably about 800 to 1,000 people show up. But in turn, those 1,000 people are actually picking up food for maybe 2,700 people.
Okay.
You got 2 or 3 people in their family. So we distribute food directly to public that way. And then the other way we distribute food is through agencies. When I started 8 years ago, we had about 72 agencies. Right now, we have about over 160, maybe 170. We're looking at adding another 20. A lot of those are sort of smaller agencies, and we've actually also got a group within that is what we call provincial agencies, other food banks. So we will distribute food to basically any other food bank that needs some help or reaches out or makes contact. I mean, we've been up to Pemberton, Whistler, Squamish. We go all the way up to Lake Country. Last summer, I had so much food. And part of my frustration is the sort of the breakdown in the lack of facilities to handle fresh food, the refrigeration and the warehousing that's needed. We actually had to ship food out of province, and we actually sent food to Edmonton, Calgary, and even to Montreal.
Wow. So in total, on an average year, how many? You said there's a multiplying effect by the different people who show up and grab food versus the people that you're feeding. But what's your estimation, and how's that grown or stayed the same? I mean, my sense is it's grown over the years.
Since I started 8 years ago, it's tripled.
Tripled.
Yeah, we're seeing 3 times the number of people.
And we're seeing that across the nation, really. I mean, this is not
It's massive.
massive,
It's frightening. the amount of people seeing a food bank. What's not frightening for me, and the message I try and get across is that there's no shortage of food. There's a lot of food out there, and I always say the same thing. And, you know, people get fed up with me saying it. My staff are going to say it's going to be on my tombstone. There's no shortage of food. There's a distribution problem, but I think we're actually proving it. And I've actually been working with Deloitte for the last 2 years. Deloitte have come back and sort of said, like, oh my God, you're right. Let's work on this. There is just an astronomical amount of food. If you take just fruit in the Okanagan, there's about 150 to 200 million pounds of surplus fruit a year.
And talk about the business model behind this. How you know what are the economic levers that you pull? How does the business model work in your organization?
Well, as far as donations from we focus, as you know, a lot on working with farmers.
Sure.
There's a farmer tax credit that the provincial government brought out. I think it's in 4 provinces across the country. It should be in every province. In BC, it's a 25% tax credit for farmers, so they donate their surplus and they get this tax credit. The problem was when the government brought it out, they didn't really advertise it. Didn't really tell too many people. So we spent a lot of time kind of educating our farmers. And when people think there's a shortage of food until they realize that the average farmer grows about maybe 10 to 12 or even 15% more than they need to make sure that they're meeting the quotas or the quality that you know the contracts they have with different grocery chains or different wholesalers. And so if one of our farmers, for example, you know, they have 800 acres. So that means there's 80 acres of any particular crop that they're growing is extra or surplus. We started talking to them about this benefit that they could get, that they could realize. And the first year we did that, one of our farmers alone, we had about 2.5 million pounds of vegetables. He actually paid off $1 million tax bill from the previous year.
Wow.
And I actually said to him, I said, what did you do with all of those vegetables the previous year? Like over 2 million pounds of fresh vegetables. Yeah. He plowed it back in.
Wow. Now, that you shifted that so significantly. I think, what was it, 20% when you first started here in terms of fresh, and now it's in the 70s?
Our goal, we talk about sort of publicly in my comms team that are glaring at me right now, or they're sort of saying like 75%. We average, like we say 75% fresh, but we're now like every week it's 80, 85. I think 2 weeks ago we actually hit 90% fresh.
Wow.
So you come to the food bank, it's 90% fresh. The really exciting thing for me is UBC's got onto this, and we actually have a master's student this summer who's going to try and help us identify the cost savings to the for the government,
right,
through healthier people eating better food. And what does that look like? What does that translate?
So I get the input part where you're growing the fresh with food coming in.
Yeah.
What is it that pays the rent? Is it donations? And what's that model that?
It's
a tremendous operation here. So
is this when I say no government funding? We rely on the public. We rely on corporate groups. And part of your reaction when you come in here this morning is like, wow, look at this operation. Yeah. So when I tour people through here, they're literally, by the end of the tour, when I'm talking to people, they're literally like, this is phenomenal. How do I get involved? And that is kind of what I wanted, what I was hoping to kind of create, was something where people would be excited about what they see and they want to get involved in what we're trying to do. The interesting thing is when you go from 20% fresh to 80% fresh, for volunteer groups like corporate groups, when you come in here, the experience you have when you're handing out quality food,
very different,
right?
I'm sure.
We actually have very little space to take more corporate groups in. And so when I was in Houston, Texas, I went down to see what is technically the biggest food bank in the world. We do 10 million pounds of food a year. Houston, because I guess it's Texas, they do 12 million pounds a month. Wow. And the size of that operation is, like, I think we're probably the third biggest food bank in the country, but we pale in comparison to Houston.
You'd fit in a corner. Now you were just showing me a video from Mexico City.
Our warehouse that you're in right now, this was their freezer in Houston. Like
the walk-in freezer.
The walk-in freezer was like, drive a 53-foot tractor trailer in through the thing. It was unbelievable. But it's sad that it's needed, right?
Well, I was just going to say, off mic, you were showing me some video of some of your people down in Mexico City.
Yep.
And so this isn't a Canadian issue, an American issue. This is a global issue. But it's interesting how the food bank, if I can call it the food bank industry, is starting to innovate towards solutions versus the same thing. And is that, demand is growing, as you said.
Yep.
Is that demand just starting? Listen, we have to find different ways to do this to meet the growing demand. The same model, the same business model, will not work. Is that a uniform kind of thinking around colleagues of yours?
I wouldn't say it's uniform yet. I think people kind of look at me and think like, oh, this guy on the West Coast is kind of he's doing some crazy stuff. I look at it that this is the right thing to do. Why would I take the leftovers or sort of the close to expiry date stuff? Why would I take food that I wouldn't want to give to my kids if they were hungry when there is so much food out there? And so what I'm trying to do is just build this into maybe a revenue generating model where we're not fully reliant on the public. I can see in the future, in the next 5 or 10 years, I mean, times are tough for everybody. I mean, I go to the grocery store. My wife and I took the dogs for a hike. I think last Sunday we dropped into the grocery store to pick up a few things.
Yeah.
$167 later.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
it's getting worse, not better, right?
well, 2 brown grocery bags, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, what the, and so everybody is feeling this, the price of gas now, right? That's going to drive more people to the food bank.
Yeah.
And so that's going to have an effect. It has to have an effect on donations. And so I think this K economy that everybody's talking about, I think we're going to, the big donations might still come in, but those $10, $20, $30 a month donations are going to drop off. And I think a lot of food banks a lot of charities are suffering.
Yeah, they're going to wind up in the gas tank, basically.
They totally are.
Right?
And so I think it's like, this is what we need to do. We need to be innovative. We need to be entrepreneurial. We need to come up with different ideas and different solutions. We need to find ways to generate revenue. It's interesting. I was just talking with Dan at Food Banks BC, and part of the membership agreement that we have with them is that I won't resell donated food, and it's sort of the good food bank guide or policy. But it was probably written in the 80s.
Sure.
And I said, I can't sign this because I'm going to resell donated food.
Right.
And I understand why it was written originally, but we're going to take, for example, and behind you right now, I got a bunch of volunteers. We probably got 500 pounds of strawberries. I actually think it's from Loblaws.
No.
And it's surplus. Beautiful strawberries. So we're cutting them and we're freeze drying them. And there's a bag right here. Do you want to open that?
Yeah.
If you'd like to open that bag, we're freeze drying these. When you freeze dry anything, it maintains about 95, 97% of the nutrition.
And the weight goes down, I imagine.
And you lose about 75% of the weight. And that has a shelf life of probably 5 years.
Oh, look at that.
And now imagine the YMCA, there's 4,000 kids a day in daycare. Imagine if they were having that as a healthy snack.
It's delicious.
Right?
It's still it's I'm shocked.
So that is literally surplus food. And so what we're doing is I would like to take this, and who wouldn't want to buy that at a farmer's market, knowing that it's branded by the food bank, that our heart logo's on it, and the funds are going to come back to help support what we're doing. And
some orange juice here. I'm going to try this mandarin orange. Tell me the story of this.
Oh my gosh, I think we got 5 53-foot tractor trailers of mandarin oranges that were surplus, and it's a kind of a, how is it? Get the vodka. Get the vodka.
So good. Man.
And so we got the surplus again, just an excess of mandarin oranges, and it's all October, November time, getting ready for Christmas. There's a surplus. So we had just a massive donation, literally all heading to landfill. We kind of got it before it headed there, obviously. And we partnered with a third-party juicing company. And it's literally just mandarin orange juice. It goes through a hyperbaric chamber, so it's pressure treated, no additives, has a shelf life of 6 months. And
science.
The mighty fine people at Loblaws gave me 3 stores to sell this juice in. And so we're in 3 stores locally in Vancouver, selling this mandarin orange juice. And I can tell you a quick little side story from this. So John Bailey was the CEO of the Regina Food Bank. John just left for another position. John was an amazing guy with the food bank, did lots of great stuff. And John and I were good friends. And I had this crazy idea. And I said, look, I'm going to send you a 53-foot tractor trailer, refrigerated truck with 20 tons of vegetables, surplus fresh vegetables. So it was driven to Regina over a day and a half. He unloaded it. He reloaded it with what they have surplus over there, which is sort of oats and pulses and grains from Saskatchewan. Shipped me 20 tons of oats and grains and pulses. And we did that through a friend of ours, Ken Hanna, has a trucking company. He charged me cost price, which was $6,000 to move 40 tons of food. we made $8,000 selling mandarin orange juice in the first month. So I moved 40 tons of food between BC and Saskatchewan by selling mandarin orange
Amazing.
juice.
Well, yeah, it's funny because this conversation is about food banks and the expertise. It's turning into a vendor discussion about creating innovative products that meet a clear demand.
Well, I mean, imagine you come to a food bank and you're getting fresh mandarin orange juice. We hand this out to our clients.
Right.
It's not just for sale. So the vast majority of it is given to our clients. We also have.
What's the reaction of people? Like, maybe they're starting to get a bit used to it, but their first visit, it's not always a great thing, your first visit to a food bank, and then to be treated with such respect, with such great product. I mean,
one of the best things I heard from my staff in the front line was we had some seniors. Our fastest growing demographic is senior citizens, which is really sad. Like,
it's shocking in Canada because really the OAS is a minimum guaranteed income historically.
Yep.
And yet that's still not.
Well, you got to think that the 20% of people using food banks across Canada have a full-time job. In Vancouver, 30% of my 16,000 clients have a full-time job. They just can't make ends meet.
Right.
Price of housing, etc. We all know the story.
Sure.
One of the best stories I had was a couple of senior citizens who used to use the food bank 10 years ago, and now they're having a tough time, and the money's not going as far, or people are living longer.
Sure.
And they came back, and they couldn't believe
What a transformation.
the difference in the food, and they were literally like, "This is for us," and we're like, "Yeah, this is for you," and they're like,
I'm sure they must be. Are we in the right place? Like,
but isn't that great?
it's fantastic.
And I think that story going back to donors, I hear these stories across the country, shortage of food and donations are down. And honestly, we're not in that situation. I told my comms team, no more doom and gloom. We're in great shape financially, thanks to our donors. We have more food than we know what to do with. We're trying to transform it and extend the life of that food so it gives us time to get it out to people. And there's so much more we can do.
Talk about the changing nature of the clientele. I mean, across the country, we have new Canadians coming in from different parts of the world. How do you flex around the types of food that you serve to meet the many different communities here?
Well, we really try and meet people where they're at, or we try and make suggestions for different food that we give out. I mean, and eggs are a big part of what we give out. We spend probably $70,000-$80,000 a month buying eggs, because they're so universal to any sort of nation or culture, and they're so so healthy and nutritious and protein. What we do is kind of give recipe cards out or something if we're trying something different or something new. We partnered recently with Maya Farm. Have you heard of Maya Farms?
Yeah.
So
we just had him on my other podcast.
Did
The
you
Food
really?
Professor, yeah. About a month ago.
So we actually give out that shredded high protein mushroom.
That mushroom
Yeah.
mix. Yeah.
So we actually cooked it. We've cooked it up in here.
I think actually now they sent me a picture in this room. Actually,
That's right. It would have been.
right.
So we fed our entire staff in here one day
Right.
with that product.
Yeah.
And then we made recipe cards, and it's so good because anybody can, it doesn't matter what your dietary restriction really is. And so we created recipe cards for stir fry versions of it, and then a sort of a meat sauce bolognese version of it. And we actually had tasting samples as we were handing it out in our warehouse and for the public, and giving them recipe cards in different languages so they could take it and they could understand it and hopefully use it.
All right.
I actually tricked my kids at home with it. They thought it was I hate mushrooms.
Dad, is this crickets again? Is this crickets again? Because you tried that.
No, they actually genuinely thought it was meat. It was proper ground turkey
I
meat
hear.
sauce.
Yeah, I haven't
right?
tried it.
Have you not tried it?
I've not tried it. I hear it's amazing.
It is, honestly, these guys, they won that NASA award, right?
Yeah. Just
Growing
it's
protein in outer
science.
space.
Like incredible science. Let's talk about the role of the big grocery. We talk about farmers. What role is there for big grocers like Loblaws in terms of supplying you and your counterparts?
Well, I mean, Loblaws are great. They're a great help to us and a great sponsor with food banks, and they've been excellent. As I said, we have 3 stores right now that we're selling some of our juice and stuff in. If we could focus on the big grocery chains and their distribution warehouses, I think that's where the food should come from for food banks, not really what's left over at the grocery store or the surplus the excess that's there. I mean, that's still great for certain communities and certain areas that would need and really have trouble finding food. But really, if they can focus on the overproduction or the over ordering or the over amount of food that they have in some of these massive 400,000 square foot warehouse. You're sitting at a 50,000. Imagine a 400,000 square foot warehouse.
Yeah.
and just working more closely with some of the larger food banks and what we're doing, right? And also educating the public.
Big role for big communication companies.
Yeah,
right?
totally. I mean, just to partner with the food banks and just to educate the public on what we're trying to do. There's a lot of us trying to move towards more fresh food. Give us a financial donation.
Right.
I can make $10 go a lot further
Sure.
than probably anybody else.
Let's talk about 5 years from now. You've made tremendous progress.
I'm going to be retired.
It's so funny. You'll be on a golf course or a rugby pitch somewhere.
Totally.
But as you look forward, what's the future? Is this a model that you would say I would love in 5 years for across the country, across the nation, for more adoption of a similar model? Now, all foods are not the same. I'm driving here. I just drove through. I was drove through so much farmland. You've got a bounty of resources here. As you say, the folks in the prairies have got a bounty of different resources, but not everyone has resource. Can you extend this model across the country? And is that where you see things heading?
No, absolutely you can. I think I went to a luncheon a couple of years ago now, the Burnaby Board of Trade. I went to this luncheon. David Eby was speaking at it, and he made this big announcement: $150 million for farmers to grow more food. And I was probably the only person in the room that put his head in his hands and went, "Oh my God, please." Give me $150 million and I will build you infrastructure around this province, warehouses, refrigeration, as well as a production facility for flash freezing or freeze drying or juicing, where we can extend the life of food and where we can distribute it and take our time to distribute it.
Particularly north, right? I think of the northern communities.
100%.
I think they're really going to be. I know. I mean, as diesel goes up, the cost of transportation is disproportionately impact on the northern communities, right?
So I would say in the next 5 or 10 years, I think the big food banks, or the food banks that have been creative and created other revenue sources for themselves, so we're not fully reliant on the public or donors, because honestly, we don't get very much money from government at all. I think there needs to be infrastructure, a big focus on infrastructure, a big focus on working with the big trucking companies. Cisco's, the Gordon Food Services, they have trucks everywhere. What does that delivery model look like? All those trucks are not full.
Right.
How do we move more product and then sort of create the spider web just right around the province and right across the country? And the growth areas, I mean, Windsor, Ontario, June runs the Windsor, Ontario Food Bank, doing phenomenal work. Because there's more, I didn't realize this until I visited, there's more greenhouses in Windsor, Ontario than anywhere else.
Yeah.
And the amount of food that they have, we saw a massive increase in our food production here in BC when the greenhouses, I think over the last year, they just, for the first time, grew right through the winter. And the surplus that we saw. So I just think there needs to be infrastructure, there needs to be food processing. You cannot get into a freeze-drying company to do any product because pet snacks, dog treats are taking up the world, and so you got to build your own,
right.
or we've got a government could build something that we could run, put money into infrastructure and things like that, and help us get food out there. There's no shortage of food. There's a distribution problem.
Last couple of questions, kind of a rapid fire, or I'm going to pick some stakeholders and just give you, so you could give the advice to them, the stakeholders that are listening, the different people are listening. So let's start with citizens, the average citizen. How can the citizen help and continue to help, and how should they be thinking about the work you do?
If they can make a donation, a monthly donation is amazing. Even $10, $20 a month adds up for us.
There's
especially.
A multiply, like $10. You turn $10 into
$20-$30 worth of food, easy.
Right.
Easy. So a monthly donation is amazing. If you don't have the ability to do a financial donation, come and volunteer with us. I guarantee you'll have an amazing time, and we'll put a smile on not just your face, but the clients that come in as well.
Right.
It was interesting. I toured Her Honor Wendy Lissigar just in December. And she walked in.
She's the lieutenant governor for the province, right?
Lieutenant governor of BC.
Right.
And she walked into our Lougheed location. She's like, "This is awesome. You've got music playing." I'm like, "Well, why wouldn't I?"
Yeah. Wow.
She says it's like bright and cheerful and everything else. So, if you can't give a financial donation, donate your time. Come and spend a couple of hours with us. Come and help us with the strawberries we've got here that we're going to put.
I see a bunch of people cutting some strawberries.
We're going to be putting these through our freeze dryers overnight tonight, and they'll be those amazing strawberries. That's what we're turning them into.
Fantastic. All right, let's talk about the ag community. So you mentioned there's, what is it, 25% in the province credit for farmers.
There's a 25% tax credit.
So would you say their level of awareness is strong? Anything, any advice to them how they could help do things differently, or you think they're
Just
right on track?
with the surplus, find out more about that tax credit, and if they're not sure, like they can go on our website, the Food Bank, Greater Vancouver Food Bank's website, and find out about it, or make contact with us, or their own local food bank. You know,
Right.
like the surplus is out there. We need to take advantage of it.
What about like grocers and infrastructure folks like Cisco, the wholesalers, the food service? What's your advice to them?
Just to get more involved. I think I always joke with people. I love it when I get introduced to people that don't know me or don't know. They're like, "Oh, you work with the food bank. Thank you for your work." And they look at me like I work in a church basement and hand out boxes of craft dinner. And it's when they come here, they realize I look like Costco.
Yeah. It's funny, I was thinking the same thing.
Between financial donations and between the value of the food that we get donated, I mean, this is our annual operating budget is $50 million.
It's a big business.
It's a big business,
It's a big
and we
business.
treat it like a big business.
Yeah. Politicians, locally, nationally. I mean, I think, would you encourage a greater
Is that
than
a trick
20
question?
Well, in the hopes that it lands in the right place, would a 50% tax credit be better for the farmers at 25? Is there a,
Absolutely.
Right.
There's a 50% tax credit in I think, Quebec.
Okay.
I think it's 50% there. I would urge politicians to genuinely get involved. I mean, there's been so many task forces and there's been so many conversations and everything else. It's really
It's not like food, and the cost of food is not part of the
No,
the
but
political discourse, but it seems to go in different directions that maybe
It's
I'm
just-
hearing could be focused differently.
it's time for action. It's time to do something. It's time to actually sit down at the table and say, okay, let's build a pilot model of what this could look like, and let's put some money behind it. And like I say, if you gave me $150 million, I would build you infrastructure around the province of BC, and I would transform food insecurity.
Fellow practitioners across Canada. I mean, you talk about you're part of a network of people who do what you do. What are your thoughts for them, or your hopes or dreams, or
Just to, first of all, keep doing the amazing work that everybody's doing through the Food Bank Network. But don't be afraid to, everybody needs to stop being so siloed. And I think different charities need to work together a lot more. I mean, our Fresh Start program that we have at Lougheed, I mean, we've partnered with Immigration Social Services BC, with Work BC, with Canadian Mental Health, to bring all of these different services to our clients. And I just think, everything's been so siloed for so long. That there is no shortage. There's
silos belong on farms, so to speak, not
Totally.
not in your line of work, right?
100%, and just everybody needs to work. If we can work together, I mean, like I say, those strawberries that you tried. I talked to Heidi Worthington, the CEO of the YMCA here in BC, and like 4,000 kids a day, Heidi. Like I can feed we can give them healthy snacks.
No, and they're delicious. So listen, congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Your team, everything that goes on here. It's such a great place. It's invigorating to kind of visit. So I could see how people come here and that their heads are turned around. So there's nothing like a visit. So thanks so much for
Listen
joining
here,
me on the
thank
feed.
you, Michael, for being here. I love talking about it. I could talk all day, as you can tell.
Well, that's an okay thing in a podcast. That works okay. Once again, thanks for hosting.
Thank you very much.